All right, what's good, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're on part 4. I believe this is the last part of the Ultimate Timeline series. I don't know if there's going to be a part 5. I know this guy that's making these videos actively working on this series, so there might be another part to this. Nonetheless, I'm going to keep checking out Five Nights at Freddy videos. There's a bunch of videos all over YouTube about this dope ass franchise and series, so I'm gonna keep checking them out. You guys seem to like these videos, so I'm gonna give you guys what you want. That's what I do, man. Before I get into it, guys, we just announced our next main series over on this channel, and it's Avatar: The Last Airbender. If any of you guys are fans, we're gonna start reacting to those movies those shows tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. I also made a poll for you guys, for everybody on this channel. You guys commented 3 shows that you really liked. It was Warrior, Stranger Things, and The Boys. You guys voted Warrior as the show that you guys wanted us to check out the most. So that show is also going to be a new series that we're going to be starting on the channel. So yeah, man, we got a bunch of things planned, and there's so much that you guys don't even know about, you know, in the future that we got in store for you guys. So yeah, man, I'm super excited. But for now, we're going to get into the next chapter of Five Nights at Freddy's. Let's do it. Let's get right into it. As always, guys, before we do, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let's get right into it. Let's do it. Post purple guy, my man Afton is dead. I'm pretty sure they said that he survived, right?
Is no longer a corporate entity.
All debts had been paid, all assets redistributed.
Okay.
The company was outright dissolved. Even the memories of the horrors that had happened there started to fade away in the public consciousness. The people were gone too. William was dead. Henry was gone. A whole generation of young Emilys and Aftons had lost their lives to the horrors of the pizzeria. All of their collateral damage to the man in the bunny suit. Everyone the company had ever touched was dead and gone.
Aren't serial killers like interesting, yo? Like not like that, like to glorify them and shit, but isn't it crazy like the lengths that they'll go just for their own satisfaction, ruining so many lives and like making such a negative imprint on the world just for like self-satisfaction, bro?
All except
crazy.
Pay your child support, you deadbeats! I'm keeping the diamond ring. I also set the house on fire!
Clara Afton. She'd been there in the early days, back when things with William were good. They'd had the perfect home, a thriving business, the ideal family. But shortly after their youngest son died, things started to change. William had become distant, lost in his work, obsessive. She had watched him change from this irritatingly brilliant man that she had fallen in love with to a drunken monster struggling to hold himself together. And despite her trying to reach out to him in those desperate days, he was just too far gone.
Yeah, man, cool to have an interest, but don't get dissolved and lost in it. Don't let your fucking, you know, don't let yourself bleed into it and become it. 'Cause then that's when you start losing your fucking mind.
Admit it, you wanted to let me in.
For her sake, she had to leave the relationship, and from there, she largely faded into obscurity. A mystery from William's past, a footnote in his history, and that was fine for her. She wanted to leave that part of her life behind. She tried to move forward, never wanting to hear the name Freddy Fazbear again, a time defined by mistakes,
I wouldn't either.
and broken promises. But then, the paperwork started to arrive. As Fazbear Entertainment began to close as a corporate entity, suddenly her mail was flooded with notifications, requests, obligations. She had been there since the beginning, helping William in the early days of his business, and now, as a shareholder and sole living member of the Afton family, all copyrights and trademarks of both Afton Robotics and Fazbear Entertainment passed on to her. Memories of this past life that she had long left behind. Looking at the blueprints.
All right, so this is post purple guy. This is when Afton isn't like just Afton and his, like, you know, flesh and whatnot. This is Afton still exists, but he's now in the Springtrap suit, and that's his, you know, that's his vessel from here on out.
The memos. She felt old wounds begin to reopen.
Poor woman.
Regrets of a happy family that had been torn away from her. William had always been brilliant. That's what had attracted her to him in the first place. But he'd also been too blinded by obsession and pride. He was too jealous, too petty, too unable to actually see a bigger picture. But now, holding the paperwork that contained decades of heartbreak and trauma, she realized it was her turn. She was holding the power. This was her chance. And one thought resonated in her head. I will put them back together. I will put
No
them
way.
all
She
back
about to be Afton part
She
2?
would be the one to rebuild this family, to rebuild
Oh,
the pieces
no.
of that shattered life, to reclaim
Guess
the
the
kids that
apple doesn't
Fazbear
fall
had
far from the
stolen
tree.
her. How? Looking at William's work now laid out before her, she knew that he had been onto something, collecting remnant, robotic humanoids, digital conscience transference. The pieces were all in place. They were just scattered, fragmented. It was almost like there
sure
were
my
too many
phone's on
ideas
silent?
going in too many different directions. It was such an important idea that she reiterated that point to herself. There were too many ideas going in too many different directions. That said, there had to be a way to save it all. She just needed to put it all back together. But how? To rebuild her family, she would first need to rebuild
It's
the
not your
franchise that had
family
stolen.
anymore, though. Like, it's not the same people, bro. Like, it's just like their souls and shit. Like, it's never gonna be how it was. So just let it go and just live your
Ownership of
life.
The characters, their licenses, the technology patents, and the Fazbear name, she converted the corporation back to an LLC, a structure for smaller businesses that are usually family-owned. The irony was fitting. From there, she would need remnant, and lots of it. Remnant was the key. Clearly, in the later years of his life, William had been using Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals as a remnant farm, sending robots to kids' birthday parties in the hopes of nabbing bits of the stuff here and there. But clearly, it wasn't enough. He had, what, like 4, maybe 5 animatronics going out every week? No. It was a decent idea, but to get the remnant they
crazy.
required, it needed scale. Dozens, hundreds of animatronics all out there, all gathering remnant from unsuspecting customers. But to do that would require help, something William would never ask for. William had kept everything in-house. His obsession with control limited him. Clara, though, she wasn't nearly that precious. A plan like this required partners, people outside of Fazbear to do the heavy lifting. So she contacted a mid-sized delivery company, DLZ Shipping Solutions, to help build
No
replicas
fucking
of all
way.
the original animatronics. And with meal delivery apps being all the rage, why not an animatronic delivery service? Order one to celebrate your birthday, your Halloween party. How about a 4th of July picnic? We'll invite Liberty
Wow.
Chica and 4th of July Freddy on over. She would make sure that they made skins for every occasion. Chocolate Bonnies for Easter, Shamrock Freddy's for St. Patrick's Day, Dia de las Muertes
She might have been better, smarter than Afton. I actually played this game. It's alright. It's not bad.
Chicas. And thus, the
deleted it, though.
Fazbear Funtime service was born.
That's right. With the Fazbear Funtime service, you'll never be alone again. You'll always have someone watching your back.
Was it ridiculous?
Okay.
Absolutely.
So that
Was it a
commercial was
sellout?
when
No doubt.
Wifey
It
took
was
over, right?
exactly the sort of thing that William would have hated, but it needed to be done to get enough remnant. Normally, the novelty of ordering an animatronic wore off after like what, 1, maybe 2 times? But with new skins for new holidays, suddenly you had yourself an animatronic perfect for every occasion. It would keep people hooked. It would keep them ordering the latest and greatest that Fazbear Entertainment LLC
Smart
had
idea.
to offer. And
Smart
all
idea.
the while they'd be collecting and returning the remnant back to her. In a word, it was brilliant. There was just one problem with it. No one trusted the Fazbear name. The company's brand was still mud.
Yeah, you gotta
Poor guy.
rebrand.
No one would want to hire animatronics from the restaurant franchise known for murdering children. Nothing kills a party
Yeah.
quite like the threat of death, you know? So she needed to find a way to discredit the stories that had come before. She needed to win back the
That's gonna
public's
be tough.
affections, reactivate some nostalgia.
Because it's happened
for the spooky
over and
stories
over
of
and
her
over
childhood.
again.
She needed a game. Multiple games, in fact.
They lied to us. They lied to all of us. They told us that the whole point of this VR game was to undo the bad PR done by a rogue indie game developer. But that's not true at all. Those indie games were designed to conceal and make light of what happened. This isn't just an attempt to rebrand. It's an elaborate cover-up.
Struggling game developers were a dime a dozen online, most working on their magnum opus between shifts at the Dollar General. So she found one. Steve just picked him out of obscurity, the right mix of desperate and doofus willing to say and do anything for a couple extra bucks. And he fell right in line, as expected, delivering stupid little things with dumb generic names like Mangle's Quest, Balloon Boy's Air Adventure, Five Nights at Freddy's. Bad gameplay with even worse graphics, but hey, they got the job done. People were suddenly talking about the clues inside of these things, searching for the hidden lore. They were
Alright,
actively
you're starting to
making
lose me here.
jokes about dead kids.
This
in
kind of seems like it's
pizzerias.
breaking the fourth wall to a certain
Husband's
extent.
twisted history of serial murder had suddenly been reduced to a mere Nancy Drew mystery to be solved. The plan had worked. Freddy Fazbear's was suddenly more popular than ever. Things were going.
All right, I mean, I
shockingly
get the
well.
premise. They created a game to cover up, you know, the things that happened in the past, but it's a little weird that they're calling it Five Nights at Freddy's, and it looks like these are games that you guys have played and shit. So that's where I'm kind of like, you know.
Takeover and reboot of the franchise was full and complete. Suddenly infused with cash, she built the largest, most ambitious project yet, the Mega Pizzaplex. William had always been so visionary, but always thought so small scale. He was careful to a fault. Not her, though. She knew that this latest project needed to be big. It needed to be flashy. It needed to be a
Yo, she's like
children,
Afton
a place that got
times
people
10,
and
bro.
checking out the latest Fazbear products. So with a steady supply of remnant flowing in, it was finally time. The stage was set. It was time to get to her real goal,
Wow.
literally rebuilding a family.
That will never be what it was,
March
but
2035.
go ahead, do your thing.
First was obvious. The crying child, her little boy, the one that was the first to get ripped away from her. She'd seen down in his bunker that William had gotten very close to replicating artificial humans using animatronic technology, and so that's exactly what she would do. Rebuild her boy from the ground up using robotic parts. His shaggy brown hair, his favorite striped shirt, even down to
Yeah,
small
like
details that no one would
it's
notice,
cool,
the
like, you know what I
bandage
mean?
left
But it's
beneath.
not gonna be
William's
him.
Research had even found ways of making animatronics that could bleed and process food, making them virtually indistinguishable from a typical human. He
Oh.
would never have any idea of what he actually was unless he was explicitly told. The
Oh,
only things that
okay.
could possibly ruin the illusion were any overrides to his internal systems. If something were to, say, interfere with the cameras that he had in his eyes, or cause some sort of a core reboot to his hard drive, or x-ray his metallic bones,
Interesting.
then yeah, he would be exposed. But otherwise, to the outside world,
He would never
was just
know.
your typical normal
Yeah.
human boy. She worked down
Okay,
in the bowels of the
alright,
pizza
never
place later in
mind.
life, but it was one thing.
Yo, Afton's wife is like, I thought Afton was a genius. She's good.
There's another to help him remember his identity. He died so young, so early in their history that there was no preserved memories for him. No documentation that she could just download into his digital brain. So bit by bit, she trained him, forcing him to remember who he was. In a corner of the room, she even made a makeshift dinner table, a reminder of their happier days. The family recreated: 2 brothers, a sister, a father, and the mother at the head of the table. The one in charge, the one in command, the one bringing all of this to fruition. But his progress was admittedly slower than she would have liked. At first, he could only communicate through simple ones and zeros, then rudimentary drawings and crude letters. But bit by bit, images of his past life started to come through. Balloons, colors, houses, bears and faces, birthday parties.
Wow.
All for me. Gregory was alive. As the robot boy embraced her, she felt a warmth that she hadn't in decades. This was the joy that she'd been working for.
She's
This was what it was all
very
for.
smart,
Her son,
but
back in her arms
a
again.
little creepy.
The plan was working. She had to keep going. Next was William.
Yeah.
The family was
they
truly
both
gonna
got that evil in them. I thought when they first introduced her that she was gonna be like level-headed and insane, but she's got that psychopathic side to her as well. So
together she would need him. And she knew exactly where he was, in the ruins of that old Freddy Fazbear's pizza place where Henry had trapped him. In fact, that's specifically why she insisted on building the Pizzaplex there over the sinkhole. It was the best place to hide what her true intentions were with the entire operation. Digging through the wreckage,
making sure the
she
mic
found him.
works.
He was right where she thought he'd be. Seeing the putrid shell of the Springtrap suit, though, was not something she was prepared for. The rotting corpse of William Afton was disgusting. Scorched flesh fused into the fur lining. Hollow black sockets where eyes once were. A smell that reeked of burned carbon and bloody iron. He was no longer flesh. It was just the tangled sinews of a creature that was once called human. How far this brilliant man had fallen. It was clear that her work was cut out for her on this one. Afton was practically lifeless. The man may not have been able to die, but he was about as close as you could come. And his body would need a lot of reconstruction.
okay, never
Replacement
mind. So
arms and
he's not even alive in the
reinforcements were
Springtrap
top
suit.
priority.
He's
Pulled from their
dead,
new line of
dead. And I'm
glam
guessing
rock
this is where they're going to download his consciousness, right? And that's where he comes back.
electronics. She'd have to see if they had any spare Bonnie parts lying around that they could steal. In the meantime, though, she threw the husk that was once her husband into a life support pod infused with aerosolized remnant to help keep him stable. But more important than recovering his body was recovering his mind. In his current state, he was comatose, an empty shell. Severe brain damage starts at temperatures over 108 degrees Fahrenheit. 42 degrees Celsius, and years of repeated fires had burned his brain to goo. Gone was the brilliant, frustrating mind that had drawn her to him in the first place. But she had a plan. Unlike her darling boy Gregory, Afton had found ways to record his consciousness. Fundamentally, the brain is only a series of electrical connections after all, so why couldn't you replicate that in the form of a standard circuit board? In essence, you could create a digital consciousness. And one thing she knew about William, he was nothing.
Why can't you do that in real life?
A planner, someone who had backup plans to his backup plans.
Here's one thing you need to do. Don't
Story's
spend
getting
another
hella
dime on
interesting.
Amazon.
And sure enough, there it was, buried in piles of old animatronic CPUs, a record of Afton himself. But she needed someone to test it.
Someone was definitely here during the night. It had to have been the client. I mean, they sent us that stuff in the first place with no explanation, told us to scan it, said it would expedite the process so we wouldn't need to program any pathfinding ourselves.
Unlike the other games that she'd paid to have made in the past, this one had a different purpose. This wasn't about PR, it was about getting William back up and running, spreading his virus to the masses.
You acknowledge that Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidental digital consciousness transference, real-world manifestations of digital characters.
She hired a new developer, Silver Parasol Games, to scan the boards and bring her husband into the system. And because of the immersive nature of VR, William's consciousness would be able to merge with the player, giving him a new body, a new agency. There was just one complication.
So he's alive, but he's like alive in the game?
His hold wasn't as powerful as she had hoped. He wasn't able
But like
to gain
actually
control.
like
The
there.
first trial run, Jeremy was so desperate to escape from his grasp that he sliced his own face off with a paper shredder. Messy. Afton's followers were reluctant, to say the least. But it was the second attempt that looked like it had the potential to kill two birds with one stone. Enter Vanessa. Mrs. Afton wanted a surrogate daughter. Her darling Elizabeth would have been a young woman at this point if she had lived. And Clara wanted someone who wasn't Elizabeth but could be just like her. Could she have just rebuilt her like Gregory? Sure, but she decided against it because she wanted an actual human mother-daughter connection. Well, that, and it would be redundant and narratively unsatisfying to have two robot kids in the same family. What could she say? William had put a lot of tools on the table for her to use, and she was planning on using them all. Plus, Elizabeth had always been so loyal to Daddy. It was time to give her a second chance, a true choice. And Vanessa seemed to be the perfect candidate to fill the role.
Your dad's name was Bill? Your dad didn't play fair, did he? He used to make your mum look bad in court. He manipulated you. I know your mum after she lost the custody case.
I was supposed to be a good girl.
She started as a QA tester at Silver Parasol Games, the VR game development company that was part of her plan to bring back William. But more importantly, Vanessa checked all the correct boxes. Right age, blonde, green eyes, with fondness for flowers and the outdoors. In many ways, it was her daughter all over again. Except it wasn't just looks and personality. What really mattered was Vanessa's mind. Underconfident, coming from a broken home, motherless, able to be manipulated. She would do nicely. She would be the one to save dear old Daddy.
They're both sick. Afton and his wife.
Make you proud, Daddy.
While testing the VR game, William's digital consciousness merged with Vanessa. Oh sure, she fought, fragmenting Afton's code into a series of tapes hidden across the game, trying to do web searches to regain control over her life, but it wasn't enough. She was weaker than Jeremy. She was a thrall that, despite occasional moments of lucidity, had to obey. And with Vanessa, it was a 2-for-1 deal. She was getting a daughter back, while also bringing her husband one step closer to reactivation. She just had to make sure that Vanessa was headed right.
Man.
The reborn Gregory was an expert hacker, part of the benefits of being an Afton and a robot. So Clara had him keeping tabs on Vanessa, hacking into her emails and trailing her therapy sessions to ensure the future Elizabeth was falling in line. If any of the therapists started to ask too many questions,
this is
they were
sick.
promptly
This is like evil, bro.
And while Gregory kept tabs on Vanessa's personal life, Mrs. Afton made sure to clear a path for her professionally. With Silver Parasol's collapse at the hands of the anomaly, she then had the possessed Vanessa bring the contaminated circuit boards to DLZ shipping and the Fazbear Funtime service. More glitches, more Remnant, more Afton. But it was her last move that was the best. In a true masterpiece of poetry, she brought Vanessa over to be Chief Security Officer at the Pizza Plex. A true family tradition to don the hat and badge, and all it took was a recommendation from the top as well as some emails marked for deletion. Sure, Vanessa didn't have relevant experience for the job, but when it comes directly from the CEO, does it really matter? Husband, son, daughter. A corpse, a robot, a human. All that was left was Michael. Poor, troubled Michael. The boy that killed
what's going on with Michael?
One that would spend years trying to make his guilty conscience right again. A self-professed protector. While she knew she needed him to complete the family, something told her that the problem had already solved itself. Something had shifted when using Glamrock Freddy to excavate the buried pizza place.
I have been here before. I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path. I have changed. My friends are here, but I can protect you.
You want?
I am not me.
Maybe it was the remnant that had coursed through Michael's veins. Maybe it was the spirit of Michael living on as a protector. But he was there, somewhere inside of Glamrock Freddy. She could feel it. And just like that, she'd won. She'd done it. Sure, there were still some kinks to work out, some final brainwashing of Vanessa, some rehabilitation of William, but they were there. Finally, all together again under one.
She's got all the pieces to the puzzle.
Reunited, a happy ending. And that's how it could have ended. That's how it should have ended, had it not been for a few unanticipated developments. For one, something was just wrong with the Pizzaplex. Almost as if the entire building was haunted, possessed. Puppet plushies hiding on ceilings, behind crates, places that they had no earthly way of belonging. Staff bots with greasy tears down their eyes acting like they were being puppeteered by some sort of a nightmare. Even their sounds had the echo of nightmares long past. It was as though a guardian spirit of the past refused to move on. As long as her husband was around, it too would linger. Only now, it wasn't just in one body, but it was in the essence of the building itself. She had seen stories of houses built on burial grounds getting possessed by angry spirits, but she'd never assumed that it could be real. Then again, in a world of living spirit metal and mind
Man, were you wrong?
Who was she to be so judgmental? The whole thing was ridiculous. Why
I mean,
would
if
this be
you're...
the line that she refused
Never
to
mind, I'm
cross?
just letting them keep
After all,
talking.
The Pizzaplex was built over the burial ground of angry spirits, but it was the power cords that finally convinced her that something was wrong. Suddenly, these cords were striped black and white, like the security puppet from generations ago. The very foundations of this place, the materials and wires that constituted it, were rebelling against her, against the Aftons, against the quest to bring them all together again. And it was being helped by something else, something slithering through the building. Maybe they were connected, she couldn't be sure, but a blob of living wires could be heard oozing through the walls.
Isn't it crazy how the animatronics are kind of like the protagonists in a way? You know what I mean? Because like they're not the bad guys. Like they're scary and shit, and they try to get you throughout the game, but like they're not the bad guys. They're like the good guys, and Afton and his wife and shit are like the antagonists, you know what I mean? That's really interesting, you know?
Pieces and parts of the old animatronics showcased in Rockstar Row. She could only assume that it was a byproduct of all the remnant they'd been collecting. From Afton's testing, she knew that both light and dark remnant existed, one of positive emotions and the other created from anguish, anger, agony. Perhaps this thing was an amalgamation of all the darkest parts of the pizzeria's history, a collection of the hatred still housed inside these defunct endoskeletons and exosuits. As long as it was left alone, it seemed to be harmless. But if any Afton outside of Michael got too close, it would lash out wildly. Even young Gregory, looking to punish the family that had been complicit in its horrible creation. Little did she know, though, that Gregory should have been her biggest concern, that bringing the family together would have some unforeseen consequences. Gregory was normally the goodest of boys. She had literally built him that way. But lately, he'd been disappearing more and more often, disobeying her orders, requests. She knew that he loved playing on the arcade machines once the Pizzaplex closed, being so good as to top the leaderboard on practically all of them. But lately, he was nowhere to be found.
He is a robot.
She suspected his absence had to do with Glamrock Freddy's failed performance the other night, when he malfunctioned live on stage. Almost as though the core programming of Freddy responded to seeing this rebuilt small boy. Almost like it awakened something inside of him. She'd have to make sure that Vanessa was on the lookout for him, but she'd soon come to learn that Vanessa wasn't enough. Whether it was the influence of the nightmare puppet or a reawakened hatred of animatronics seated deep in Gregory's code, something had caused him to rebel, to rip apart each animatronic in the Pizzaplex. Bit by bit, this boy was tearing down the empire that she'd so painstakingly built, freeing Vanessa from her mind control, destroying the remains of Afton in the basement, setting Glamrock Freddy loose. As her carefully created world crumbled around her one more time, she began to plot her revenge. She would have to bring them all to ruin. And there you have it, my friends. Nearly a decade in the making.